We don't need October 24th, 1929. We can look at today. And we understand a Great Depression. That is, life has collapsed, bringing about a great pain in our emotional well-being. The supernatural that some of us need has nothing to do with our circumstances. It has to do with being able to remain in our right minds. Because if I simply were to look at the circumstances, if you would look at what you're going through, it's the mental collapse that is overwhelming you and that is debilitating you and that is keeping you from functioning at the level that you need to for your well-being. And so as we continue with the study of the life of Elijah, we want to look at now another kind of supernatural miracle he needed. This was not a miracle that had to do with money and houses and land. This was a miracle that had to do with his need to be lifted out of his depression. Most of us know at least discouragement. Discouragement typically is related to a loss of something. You're discouraged because you lost your job. You're discouraged because you lost your health. You're discouraged because the bills have climbed up and you've lost your financial freedom. That brings about discouragement where things are not going well and you're sort of downcast. Right now, you're living under a fog or an overcast sky. But when discouragement continues and elongates itself, discouragement devolves into depression. Depression is discouragement on steroids. It's discouragement that now has produced an ongoing level of gloom, an ongoing level of emotional pain. And when discouragement becomes depression, depression unresolved becomes despair. And when depression becomes despair, that ongoing discouragement that has led to depression, which now results in despair, produces a sense of hopelessness. You see no way out. You see that there's going to be no exit sign. There's no way to get around this thing. There's no way to beat this thing. It will not go away. And then when discouragement results in depression that leads into despair, then you wind up considering the possibility of death. Because maybe that's my only way out, because the hopelessness has gone on so long, so that death as a result of despair due to continuing depression resulting from ongoing discouragement has placed me in a place where I see nothing else to live for. And so we know what it is, or we know people who know what it is, to have the need for an emotional miracle. If nothing else ever changed in our lives with regard to our circumstances, our situation, if I could just get my mind straight, if I could just get my thinking right, if I could just get my mind straight, I can make it. But no matter what externally happens, there's a demon in my head that I can't shake. That's our situation today with Elijah. The hand of the Lord was on him. I mean, he's run 15 miles nonstop at lightning speed because the hand of the Lord was on him. He's then sucked down rain from heaven because the hand of the Lord was on him. He's destroyed 400 prophets because the hand of the Lord was on him. Here is a prophet on steroids. He's got it going on and he is doing large. But in less than 24 hours, his world changes, his life collapses. And in less than a day, everything is turned around and he is gone from the hilltop, the mountain peak of victory, to the valley of despair. And many of us knows that sometimes it doesn't take 24 hours for things to turn on you. A pink slip that you didn't anticipate, a person walking out of your life who you were counting on, a diagnosis or a physical ailment that you didn't even know was operating within your body. In less than 24 hours, your need for a miracle has now dumped in your head. And there is a need for a supernatural intervention into your emotional stability and well-being. That's our situation with Elijah. He's going to find himself where many of us have often found ourselves, in a black hole. He's going to find himself looking for a light at the end of the tunnel, only to discover it's the light of an oncoming train. because his whole world is going to be turned upside down in a day. When we come to chapter 19, we find out what led to this emergency shift in his emotions. You see, he had an expectation, because when we finished chapter 18, he had told Ahab, cheer up, laugh, party, eat, and drink, because it's going to rain. And Ahab got in the chariot and made his way home. Elijah beat him home by running. Ahab went home and told his wife, Jez, there's this prophet Elijah, and he done killed 400 of my boys. And he stopped the rain. He brought back the rain. And Jezebel said, I'm going to send a message to Elijah that if you don't get out of town by tomorrow this time, you're a dead man. Now, Ahab had a controlling wife. And Jezebel was running this show. Jezebel was calling this shot. And Jezebel was telling him, Elijah, you're a dead man. Some of y'all work for Jezebel. Some of y'all work with Jezebel. Some of y'all live with Jezebel. Jezebel is an evil threat that comes your way. It is something or someone who threatens your well-being, because she threatened by tomorrow this time you're going to be dead. So any threat in your life that comes your way that produces discouragement, depression, despair, or even, as we're going to see in a moment, a desire to die, is a Jezebel in your life. It's something or someone who threatens the stability of your mental well-being. So when a boss threatens you that he's going to fire you and it's not a legitimate reason, he's become Jezebel. When there's a person who threatens you or your stability, they are in fact being a Jezebel in your life. They are operating as the new Lord over your emotions. And the reason why they can operate as Lord over your emotions is because their threat gets into your head. And when their threat gets into your thought affects your feelings. You see, we are made up of three parts. We're made up of body, our physical being. We're made up of soul. Psychology is soul, the study of the soul. So we're made up of a personhood, and then we're made up spiritually. What you have to understand is all three of these are interconnected and interrelated. So as you'll see in a moment, if you feel bad physically, it affects how you're going to think psychologically, which may affect also how you function spiritually. Or if you're down spiritually, that may affect your ability to function physically or your ability to be able to reason psychologically. Or if you're off psychologically, it can make you want to go to bed physically and make you not want to deal with something spiritually. Because all three are interconnected and all three affect the other two. So it is understanding how these three connect with each other, and all three are in this story, that you will understand how to deal with that which controls the mind. Now let's understand, since emotions are part of the soul, how the soul relates to the thought, so that you can understand how to find God's work in that which discourages you emotionally. Your emotions are like the caboose on a train. Your mind, your thoughts are like the engine. When the engine of a train goes up the mountain, the caboose is going to go up with it, because the caboose is hooked on to the engine. When the engine goes down into the valley, the caboose is going to go with it, because the caboose is going to follow wherever the engine winds up. So if the engine is your mind and the caboose is your emotions, if your mind is wrong, your emotions are going to be wrong. If your mind is right, your emotions are going to be right. That's why a change in your mind will always change how you feel. So if you came in here depressed today, downhearted today, in despair today, wanting to throw in the towel today, and one of the ushers comes in and hands you a card that just says, you won $1 million, I don't care how you felt when you came in, you're going to run out of here shouting, jumping, flipping, spitting, and celebrating, because you got some new information in the engine that affected the movement of the caboose. So you have to understand your emotions are the caboose. It's real, but it always follows the engine of thought. So if a Jezebel gets into your mind, that's going to control the caboose of your emotions. So one of the reasons so many of the cabooses of our feelings are being controlled is so many of the thoughts that enter our head are the threats from Jezebel trying to control our reality. He is now living under a threat. Jezebel, the evil one, has threatened his well-being and his life. And he's trying to figure out now, how is he going to face this? And this is overnight. His whole life has changed because somebody has gotten into his head. So what he does is he goes on another day's journey. The man had run 15 miles. Now he's going to go on a whole nother day's journey. He sits under the juniper tree, verse 4, and he requests for himself that he might die. It is enough now, O Lord, take my life, for I am not better than my fathers. He wants to die 24 hours after the biggest miracle he's seen. This is a fast, slippery slope. Okay, watch this now. Elijah is not a carnal Christian. Elijah is not an unspiritual person. He's been called a man of God. We just saw the hand of the Lord was on him. So guess what? It's possible for spiritual people to get depressed.
Dr. Evans will return in a moment to tell us about some incredibly spiritual people who struggled with depression when he continues this message from his current series, Elijah. This 6-part collection focuses on the lessons we can learn from one of the Bible's greatest prophets about waiting for God's provision, living a life that matters, overcoming fear and discouragement, and more. Request the series today, and we'll include a special bonus, the companion DVD Bible study kit that digs even deeper into the substance of these messages, and even includes exclusive content from Tony. We're offering them all for a limited time as our gift when you make a donation to support this ministry. Don't miss out. Visit us today at tonyevansradio.org, make your contribution, and let us send you the full-length Elijah series messages on CD or MP3s, as well as the DVD Bible study kit. Again, that's tonyevansradio.org, or call us day or night at 1-800-800-3222, and one of our resource team members will help you. Well, Dr. Evans will come back with more of today's lesson right after this.
When prices go up, it's easy to get down. That's why the Tony Evans Training Center wants to lift your spirits. We're lowering our monthly fee. Take it from Danny, a TETC user. Danny says, I listen to every sermon and watch every video that Dr. Evans posts. He is changing the world one person at a time. Engage in over 50 courses with thoughtful content from Dr. Tony Evans. Visit tonyevanstraining.org to subscribe today.
Depression is not a sign of lack of spirituality, because God is going to reference him throughout this conversation as his servant. Why would spiritual people get discouraged, depressed, into despair, and even get suicidal? Why would that happen to us spiritual people? Because we found out in James 5 that we are of like nature. We're human. And in our flesh and blood, that is, in our humanness, we become subject to influences that trigger thoughts in our minds. So don't think that it is necessarily the case, it could be, but it is necessarily the case that your struggle with discouragement or depression has to do with the fact that you're not spiritual. Because spiritual people get depressed. In fact, all through the Bible, spiritual people got depressed. Moses got depressed, asked God to kill him. Job got depressed because of all the trials he was going through, and he wants to know, why do the righteous suffer? And poor David, he was depressed all the time. You read the Psalms, and he's going from one mountain to one valley, one mountain to one valley. You read, you don't have to turn there now, but read Psalm 42 and Psalm 43, and he says, oh, my soul, why are you disquieted within me? Why are you so sad? He's talking to himself because he's depressed in Psalm 42. He's depressed in Psalm 43, and he's trying to work himself out of this depression. And at the very same time he's depressed, he's still calling on God. Or you take Paul, the greatest Christian that ever lived, the greatest Christian in the New Testament, 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 8 through 11. He said he got so low, he was at the point of death. He said he had the sentence of death on him. And this is a spiritual man. So you can be spiritual and be down. He's ready to give up. He's ready to throw in the towel. He lays down because he's so tired under a juniper tree, which is only a tree big enough for one person to lay under it. And there was an angel touching him and said, arise, eat, verse 5. He looked up, and behold, there is a bread cake baked on hot stones, a jar of water, so that he ate and drank and lay down again. But this is supernatural. because the angel fed him. So this is not natural food. The angel only showed up after Elijah had had an honest conversation with God. You see, he told God, I want to die. He told God, I'm not good as my fathers. He told God, I have nothing left. He told God, I'm done. And God sent an angel. The reason why a lot of us don't get our angels is because we're not honest with God. We play church, play religion, and certainly play prayer. Notice how raw he is with God. God, I'm so low, I want to die. Did you know that's the kind of conversations God wants to have with you? He wants to have raw conversations, that is, conversations that are real, even if you feel like it's God who has disappointed you. If you tell the truth and shame the devil. Sometimes we're not just mad at people, and sometimes we're not just mad at ourselves. Sometimes we ticked off at God. God, I asked you, you didn't answer me. I begged you, you didn't respond. I pleaded with you and you didn't do anything. I cried out to you and nothing has changed. So God, I don't like what you're doing to me. Did you know that's the kind of praying God wants? He wants some truth-telling prayers, some honest prayers. Now, you got to do it respectfully. But he still wants the real thing because he knows what you're going through. The scripture says he knows we're of flesh. So Elijah comes and he bears his soul to God. Because look, when you're ready to die, there ain't no time to be cute. When you so low you want to throw in the towel, that's not the time to play church. That's not the time to just go through religious activity. He gets raw with God. Second thing I want you to notice is how God addressed him. You know how irritated you get when you're tired? You don't want people talking to you, you don't want the kids talking to you, you don't want your mate talking to you. He gives them a cake, he gives them water, and he tells them to rest. Because some causes of discouragement are physical. And unless the physical is addressed, the psychological is going to be off and the spiritual is going to be off. Because if you're physically off, you don't feel like praying. If you're physically off, you don't feel like relating properly. If you're physically off, we all know what it is. That's why people who have chemical imbalances in their brain don't just need a Bible verse, they need a doctor. Because there is something physically going on that needs to be balanced out. And going to church and prayer has its place, but it doesn't restore naturally and automatically chemical imbalances because that's physical. If you're hungry, James says you don't need just a prayer meeting. You need somebody to make you a ham sandwich when you're hungry because there is a physical reality going on. So it is quite legitimate to examine whether there are physical causes to your emotional struggles and to have those physical causes addressed. Now, God addressed it supernaturally because he sent an angel. But let me tell you about angels. Hebrews chapter 1 verse 14 says that every believer has been assigned an angel. Every Christian has an angel. So God has an angel and he knows your name. Now, the problem with angels is they're invisible because they're spirit beings, and they're supernatural in nature because they're heavenly beings. And so the job of an angel is your personal post office carrier whose job it is to deliver whatever God wants delivered to you. That's what your angel's job is, and every believer has one. But notice the angel doesn't come until the communication takes place between Elijah and his God. So God needs honest communication, prayer, but real prayer, not fake prayer, not played prayer, honest prayer. He dispenses the angel in order to provide the physical help that he is needing to deal with his reality of depression that he is going through. You would have to be a perfect person living in a perfect world not to be discouraged. Okay, my highest point every week is 5 o'clock in the morning on Sunday in my anticipation of preaching the sermon for the day. So I kind of bounce out of bed real early on Sunday morning and I am geek. I'm ready to go for the 2 services. So that's my high point. Now my low point is 1:30 on Sunday afternoon. Because after the second service, after I've talked to the guests, after I've talked to anybody I talked to after the service, and I get in my car and make my way home, I can feel it draining out of me. Because there's been physical exertion, psychological exertion, and spiritual exertion, and there's nothing left. because he says Elijah is of like nature. So he deals with the reality of exhaustion physically, emotionally, spiritually. And so does everybody else. But that's also the opportunity that the devil looks for to take advantage of. Even in the case of Jesus, and Jesus didn't have a spiritual problem. But after he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights in the wilderness, it says the devil came to tempt him. Why? He was tired and he was hungry and he was weak. So being tired, hungry, and weak gave the devil the opportunity he had to try to get to the most spiritual person who's ever lived. So you know, if the devil is going to attack Jesus, who couldn't sin and didn't sin, and he already knows our propensity to sin, that you are perfect bait for him to enter your thought in order to get to the caboose of your emotions, in order to send you a downer in your life.
Dr. Evans will come back with a closing thought for us in just a moment. But first, a reminder to visit tonyevansradio.org to receive your own copy of his 6-lesson teaching series on Elijah. The messages are available right away as digital downloads, or you can have them sent to you on CDs. Either way, the lessons come to you along with that bonus I mentioned earlier, the companion DVD Bible Study Kit, all as our thank you gift for your contribution to Tony's ministry here on the air. This offer is only available for a few more days, so make a point of visiting us right away at tonyevansradio.org to make the arrangements. Again, that's tonyevansradio.org. Or call our 24-hour resource center at 1-800-800-3222 and let one of our team members help you. That's 1-800-800-3222. Well, coming up tomorrow, there are modern-day treatments for depression, but Dr. Evans says there's only one that only has positive side effects, and it doesn't even require a prescription. Right now, though, he's back with his closing thought for today.
What a lot of people do, you come to church and you get on a high, a spiritual high. You can leave church sometimes floating just because you heard from God, you heard the word of God, the choir was awesome, the fellowship was great. And before you get home, your get up and go is gotten up and gone. And just before you get home, just you want to know what happened. How can I be so close to that? And when I run into them people who live in my house, I just lose it. How can all that happen in a few hours, minutes, seconds? People go to conferences to get high. That's the problem with conferences. They'll get you high and then they'll let you down because you've gotten high for an emotional moment, but then you got to go back to the reality of day-to-day living. And you can't live up there. You can't live on the mountain because, by the way, if you're going from mountain peak to mountain peak, between them mountains there's valleys. That's what separates the mountain is a valley. And unfortunately, in this life, you will have those.
The Alternative with Dr. Tony Evans is brought to you by the Urban Alternative and is made possible by the generous contributions of listeners like you. Dr. Tony Evans, author, speaker, senior pastor of Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship in Dallas, Texas, and president of the Urban Alternative. There are modern-day treatments for depression, but today Dr. Evans will tell us about one that only has positive side effects, and it doesn't even require a prescription. Let's join him as he takes us to 1 Kings 19 for today's message.
All of us have been in level number 1, discouragement. Many of us have been in level number 2, depression. And so we know what it is, or we know people who know what it is to have the need for an emotional miracle. If nothing else ever changed in our lives with regard to our circumstances, our situation, if I could just get my mind straight, if I could just get my thinking right, if I could just get my mind straight, I can make it. But no matter what externally happens, there's a demon in my head that I can't shake. That's our situation today with Elijah. Here is a prophet on steroids. He's got it going on and he is doing large, but in less than 24 hours, his world changes, his life collapses, and in less than a day, everything is turned around and he is gone from the hilltop, the mountain peak of victory to the valley of despair. And many of us knows that sometimes it doesn't take 24 hours for things to turn on you, a pink slip that you didn't anticipate, a person walking out of your life who you were counting on, a diagnosis or a physical ailment that you didn't even know was operating within your body. In less than 24 hours, your need for a miracle has now dumped in your head. And there is a need for a supernatural intervention into your emotional stability and well-being. That's our situation with Elijah. He's going to find himself where many of us have often found ourselves, in a black hole, because his whole world is going to be turned upside down in a day. When we come to chapter 19, we find out what led to this emergency shift in his emotions. You see, he had an expectation, because when we finished chapter 18, he had told Ahab, cheer up, laugh, party, eat, and drink, because it's going to rain. And Ahab got in the chariot and made his way home. Elijah beat him home by running. The problem is Ahab went home and told his wife, Jez, there's this prophet Elijah, and he done killed 400 of my boys. And he stopped the rain. He brought back the rain. And Jezebel said, I'm going to send a message to Elijah that if you don't get out of town by tomorrow this time, you're a dead man. Now, Ahab had a controlling wife. He had a woman who was telling him what to do. He had a controlling wife, and this wife had taken over when it was Elijah's anticipation that Ahab was going to turn things around. He didn't know who he was married to. He was married to a lady named Jezebel, and Jezebel was running this show. Jezebel was calling this shot, and Jezebel was telling him, Elijah, you're a dead man. Some of y'all work for Jezebel. Some of y'all work with Jezebel. Some of y'all live with Jezebel. Jezebel is an evil threat that comes your way. It is something or someone who threatens your well-being, because she threatened by tomorrow this time you're going to be dead. And he's trying to figure out now, overnight, his whole life has changed because somebody has gotten into his head. So what he does is he goes on another day's journey. The man had run 15 miles. Now he's going to go on a whole nother day's journey. He sits under the juniper tree, verse 4, and he requests for himself that he might die. It is enough now, O Lord, take my life, for I am not better than my fathers. He wants to die 24 hours after the biggest miracle he's seen. This is a fast, slippery slope. Okay, watch this now. Elijah is not a carnal Christian. Elijah is not an unspiritual person. He's been called a man of God. We just saw the hand of the Lord was on him. So guess what? It's possible for spiritual people to get depressed. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Depression is not a sign of lack of spirituality. Why would spiritual people get discouraged, depressed, into despair, and even get suicidal? Why would that happen to us spiritual people? Because we found out in James 5 that we are of like nature. We're human. And in our flesh and blood, that is, in our humanness, we become subject to influences that trigger thoughts in our minds. So you can be spiritual and be down. You can be spiritual and be emotionally struggling through something. So don't automatically feel that your discouragement is due to your carnality. Now, if you are carnal and if you are spiritual, then it could very well be related to that. But it's not automatically related to that, specifically in the life of someone who is pursuing God. So he's ready to give up. He's ready to throw in the towel. And when he's ready to throw in the towel, he lays down because he's so tired under a juniper tree, which is only a tree big enough for one person to lay under it. And there was an angel touching him and said, arise, eat, verse 5. He looked up and behold, there at his head, a bread cake baked on hot stones, a jar of water, so that he ate and drank and lay down again. The angel only showed up after Elijah had an honest conversation with God. You see, he told God, I want to die. He told God, I'm not good as my fathers. He told God, I have nothing left. He told God, I'm done. And God sent an angel. The reason why a lot of us don't get our angels is because we're not honest with God. The angel of the Lord comes in verse 7 a second time. Arise, eat, because your journey is too great for you. Now watch this. So he lets him rest before he lets him continue. So he arose and ate and drank and went in the strength of the food 40 days and 40 nights to Horeb, the mountain of God. That's how you know it's supernatural. Because what he ate lasted him 40 days and 40 nights. See, that ain't normal. It is supernatural when God comes through and when God gives you the ability to keep going when a few minutes ago you were ready to give up. And that's how you know God has shown up in your life. When you're ready to throw in the towel and he brings something in your experience that quickens you, wakes you up so you can get up and keep going. And guess where he told him to go? To the mountain of God. Okay, watch this now. When you are depressed, many times the last place you want to go is to the mountain of God. The mountain of God means to go in God's presence. That's the last place you want to go. But that's the first place God wants you to run to. He wants you to run to his presence and bring your depression with you. Bring your discouragement with you. He'll give you enough to get to the mountain, to get to his presence. So he calls him into his presence. Now it gets really interesting. Then it came to a cave, lodged there, verse 9. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him and said, what are you doing here, Elijah? What are you doing here, Elijah? Now we have a lesson in Christian counseling. Okay? God is now taking the form of a counselor and he says, what are you doing here, Elijah? Whenever I counsel or any one of our counselors counsel, we ask, why are you here? Now, God doesn't have to ask, why are you here? Because he doesn't know. Because he knows why you're here. He knows that you've been frustrated. In fact, he just fed you. But he asked him, why are you here? The reason God asked him, why are you here, is not for God to get information. The reason he asked, why are you here, is for him to fully express what he's dealing with. So what are you dealing with, Elijah? And here's what Elijah says. Elijah says, I have been very zealous for the Lord, for the God of hosts, for the sons of Israel have forsaken your covenant, torn down your altars, killed your prophets with the sword, and I alone am left, and they seek my life to take it away. Okay, so let's discuss why he's here. Why are you in this situation? Why are you so depressed? Okay, you asked me, God, I'm going to tell you. I committed myself to you. I dedicated myself to you. All them other people are unspiritual. They didn't keep your covenants. They were worshiping those idols. And I'm all here by myself. He has adopted a victim's mentality. A victim's mentality is a mindset that you adopt because of negative circumstances that says, I'm where I am because everybody else is where they are. I'm here by myself because none of them are agreeing with you, and that's put me out here by myself, and you got me out here by myself. That's a victim's mentality. Now, you can be a victim, but you are to never adopt a victim's mentality where everybody else is responsible for where you are. A victim's mentality is because of them, I'm here. And as long as you have that kind of mentality, you'll always be there. You may be a victim, but you are to never adopt the victim's mentality, because then that allows you to put off being responsible to make the change you should make, because they're not making the change they should make.
Dr. Evans will come back in a moment with an illustration that'll help you see that victim mentality in a different light when he continues this message from his series on the life of Elijah. There weren't many biblical characters more deeply connected with God than this powerful prophet. Yet he still struggled with discouragement and depression and had to face many obstacles and opposition. If you can identify with some of those problems, you'll benefit from the answers Dr. Evans delivers in this 6-part sermon collection. We want to help you learn how to apply these life-changing principles. So we're offering the Elijah series either on CDs or instantly downloadable MP3s as our gift to anyone who will come alongside Tony's ministry with a contribution. We depend completely on your generosity to keep this program on the air. So this is one way we can support you as you support us. We'll also include a special bonus, the companion DVD Bible Study Kit, that'll equip you to get more out of each message, whether you're reviewing it on your own or with your family or small group. This special offer is only good through this Thursday, so get all the details right away and make your request online at tonyevansradio.org. Or give us a call at 1-800-800-3222, where resource team members are standing by day and night to help you. That's 1-800-800-3222. Well, Dr. Evans will come back with more of today's message right after this.
There is so much kindness from God that you can get used to it and forget that none of those things that make life possible start with us. They start with God.
Join a unique nationwide kindness campaign by committing to do one kind act each week for someone else. After your kind action, share a specifically designed kindness card with them. Each card has a QR code that leads to the gospel and tools for spiritual growth. Visit tonyevansradio.org to request your cards today. Be kind. Change culture.
The Cowboys cannot say, if it wasn't for them Cardinals, we would score. But them Cardinals, they keep on getting in our way. Every time we try to throw a pass, they try to steal it. Every time we try to run a few yards, they keep throwing us to the ground. Every time we try to kick a field goal, they try to block it. Shucks, that ain't right. If they would just leave us alone, we would score every time we get the ball. But we got these 11 other guys on the other side of the ball, and they just keep trying to stop us every time we try to go somewhere. Well, if they adopted that mentality for 3 hours, they would live in defeat, because those 11 men are never going to change. They're never going to stop trying to steal the ball, stop trying to block the pass, stop trying to block the kick, stop trying to tackle. They're never going to change. And if you spend all your time on this side of the line trying to get them to change on that side of the line, it's going to be a long day, because they're never, ever going to change. There are some things in your life that are never, ever going to change. Those people are going to change. Those kids not going to change. That mate's not going to change. Jezebel's not going to change. Your boss not going to change. The circumstances is not going to change. But if you live for their change, you become their victim. And that's a victim's mentality. No, the Cowboys must decide, regardless of what they do, we're going to huddle to determine what we're going to do. Because we're going to not let what they do determine what we do, because what we do is going to overcome what they do, because greater is he that's in us than he that's in the world. That means you're not operating like a victim. Now, please don't misunderstand me. You may be a victim. It may be unfair. It may not be right. It may be evil. So you may be a victim, but that's different than adopting the mindset of a victim. And too many of us socially and economically, and in this case spiritually, have become victims of the devil. If it wasn't for the devil, I wouldn't be here. Well, guess what? He ain't changing. Okay? If it wasn't for them sinners, I wouldn't be stuck here. They not changing. If it wasn't for this situation, I wouldn't be here. Okay, that may be true, but they may never change. So what are you going to do? So come, tell me why you're here, But don't expect me to just pat you on the back and feel sorry for you, because the thing that brought you here may never change. And many of us block the supernatural because we become comfortable as victims. So God says, go forth and stand on the mountain before the Lord. And behold, the Lord passed by, and it was a great wind, rending the mountain and breaking it into pieces, the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. There was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. Verse 12, he said there was a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. But after the fire, the sound of a gentle blowing. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in the mantle and went out and stood in the entrance of the cave. And behold, a voice came to him and said, what are you doing here, Elijah? That's the same question. So let's follow this. He asks him a question. He gives him a victim's answer. He then gives him all these experiences, but he says, I wasn't in none of them. I was only in the blowing breeze. Don't only look for the supernatural in something extraordinary. The supernatural, that is the voice and presence of God, often shows up in the ordinary. In other words, he wasn't in the fire, he wasn't in the wind, he wasn't in the earthquake, he was in the breeze. He brought him to the mountain of God, into a quiet place of his presence. Because many of us don't hear God because there are too many other voices we're hearing. Too many loud things, the wind, the fire, the earthquake. And he says, no, I'm in the breeze. I'm in the nice, soft thing that you're getting with my presence. Now, why are you here? Well, he says, when he heard it, he wrapped his face. He said in verse 14, he says it again, I'm very jealous for the Lord, but the people have forsaken you. I alone am left. They seek to take my life. So guess what God does? You find at the end of verse 3, it says he left his servant behind. So Elijah is by himself, because depression gets worse if there's nobody in your life to change your thinking. See, if you're feeling sorry for yourself and you're talking to yourself, that's a bad conversation for yourself. You're already feeling sorry, and there's nobody to talk to but you, about you, regarding you, to tell you what you ought to do. And you aren't in a place to even hear you correctly, and what you are telling you is only related to how you feel, then your discussion with yourself is helping yourself to become worse off about you. So God then enters the picture and tells him, Elijah, tell me how you feel. Stop talking to yourself. Because when you talk to yourself, you were getting depressed, you were suicidal. Start talking to me, okay? Now I'm going to show you the wind and the rain and all that stuff. Now talk to me again. No, Elijah, don't talk to yourself, because you and you aren't getting together with you real good. So y'all talk to me. What depression, discouragement, despair often brings is distorted information. God has to clarify. Verse 18, yet I will leave 7,000 in Israel, all the knees that have not bowed to Baal, and every mouth that has not kissed him. Now, what's his complaint? I'm the only one. God says, shh. There's 7,000 folk like you out there. It's just you are so psychologically bent right now, all you see is you. You don't have the right information. And so what did God's presence in his counseling session do? Give him new data. And then God closes by doing one other thing for him. In verses 19 through 21, he runs into a man named Elisha. At the end of verse 19 says, and Elisha passed over to him and threw his mantle on him. He left the oxen and ran after Elijah. Elisha does. And please let... let me kiss my father and my mother, then I will follow you. And he said to him, go back again, for what have I done to you? So he returned from following him, took the pair of oxen, sacrificed them, boiled their flesh with the implements, and gave it to the people, and they ate. Then he arose and followed Elijah and ministered to him. Because sometime when you're discouraged, you need somebody with flesh and blood. Sometime talking to God, he's a spirit out there. He's real, but he's a spirit out there. So guess what God did? God gave him a friend. God said, look, I'm going to bring somebody in your life who is going to minister to you. Because right now, your ministry has been depleted. And your get up and go is not there. So guess what? Now that I have been counseling with you and you brought me into the equation of your victim's mentality, I got somebody I have already set up to bring into your life to minister, to encourage, to lift you up, and to bring you out of your depression. God has an angel for you. He's got a person for you. He has himself for you. He gave Elijah all three of those to give him a supernatural experience to lift him out of his depression. And one of the reasons that the church exists is to have people available in your life when you are down who can embrace you, minister to you, lift you up, and he can use you to do the same thing for somebody else. Because when we are depressed, we need another perspective.
Dr. Evans will come back in a moment with a closing illustration about how to overcome the fear of being eaten alive by the things that threaten us. First, though, don't forget to contact us right away to request his current series, Elijah. As I mentioned earlier, you can get all 6 full-length messages, complete with the companion DVD Bible study kit, as our thank you gift for your contribution, enabling us to keep Tony's teaching on this station. This special offer is only available till Thursday, so don't wait. Reach out to our Resource Center today at 1-800-800-3222 and let one of our team members help you make the arrangements. That's 1-800-800-3222. Or visit us online at tonyevansradio.org. Getting more of God in your life leaves less room for, different things for different people. Dr. Evans will tell us about the benefits of making those trade-offs tomorrow. Right now, he's back with his final illustration.
A father one day was at the zoo with his son, and they were at the lion's cage. And the lion roared, and it terrified the little boy. He took off. The father didn't move. He said, boy, come back here. He said, Daddy, run, the lion. He said, boy, I said, come back here. He said, Daddy, the lion. He said, boy, I told you, come back here. He said, but Dad, don't you see the lion? Dad said, no, I'm staring at the cage. When you are discouraged, all you hear is the voice of the lion. You need somebody in your life who can discuss the cage, who can tell you about the bars, who can tell you that lion has got a big mouth, but he ain't going nowhere because he's being held in by something greater. Some of us are being destroyed by Satan. You need somebody who can whisper about the power of God in your life. Somebody is being intimidated by Jezebel, and you need to know from somebody who can see outside of you that greater is he that is in you than Jezebel who is threatening you. You need to be lifted out of your discouragement through honesty with God, through taking care of yourself physically in order to get the rest you need or the help you need, and to have somebody in your life who loves you enough and God enough to hook the two together. When that takes place, you may still get discouraged, but God will lift you out of it, because even godly people have to struggle with discouragement.
The Alternative with Dr. Tony Evans is brought